Hey everybody, once again, welcome to Strong Witness. We know we do this on Tuesdays. I've been thinking, I've been doing this space on Tuesdays since April. And I did not intend to do this every Tuesday. I intended to start it off with talking about sexual assault, child abuse, and like being right there in that space. And then it has transitioned to storytelling and listening to storytellers every April going forward from there. So, not every April, every Tuesday going forward from there at 6 o'clock. And, I enjoy it. I enjoy the stories of people that have come on and shared and talked and chatted. Um, and I don't know. I don't know how much longer I'll do it every Tuesday, but I know that I enjoy it and I know the stories that come from it. Tonight is another, I know it's gonna be another powerful story. This is somebody else I had to ask and I had to wait a little bit. So I got like celebrity status people on here when I ask them, and I gotta get in their schedules. But this is somebody I've known for, I want to say, I have to ask him when he comes up. I want to say since like 2000, I don't know, 2007. But we went to school together, and maybe he'll even share a story of, we were in a group where we had to travel to India, and we spent almost 3 weeks in India, and so that's a whole different experience. Um, yeah, that's a whole different experience. But India is beautiful, and the people are beautiful. So I am going to, let me see. I wanted to show the video of Strong Witness, but I'm just going to talk for a second with this understanding right here. Um, I even had somebody tell me on this week. There's something I wanted to say, but I can't remember. I even had somebody share with me on this week about the power of speaking their story and not holding on to a secret. And this person, like, it was just a blessing to hear this person talk and understand that, okay, I held on to that for so long and that consumed my life for so long. But once they began to speak, it's like everything from that point forward just broke. And it was almost like, listen, I had this big secret hanging over my head, and they're like, I'm almost upset with myself for holding on to that for so long and not letting it go. And so I love that space where we can allow other people to begin to speak, and people get that light bulb moment where they're like, listen, I could have spoke about this a long time ago. I could have shared my story. I could have shared my testimony. And again, that's the power of what Strong Witness is. But seeing other people, that light bulb go off, because I know that particular person is going to begin to speak that message to other people. I don't have to hold on to this. What was sent to destroy me doesn't have to sit with me. And that's what I think what is really dope about tonight's guest. Michael Bethune, when he comes to share his story. And he has a book, which I know I'm going to purchase, and I'm going to post the website up there. I may do it during the while he's sharing, but transforming pain into purpose. And that's something I was saying to Mike. I'm gonna bring him up in a second, but we have all been through painful, difficult experiences, just flat out, right? So it's not a question of if you'll go through, because we all have gone through, right? So it's the idea of, what do you do when you're in that pain point? Do you stop? Do you back up? Do you pack things up? Do you quit? Or do you keep pressing forward? Or do you find something to learn out of that experience? Right. So I'm going to bring Michael up now. I'm going to allow him his space to talk, to chat, to share. I'm going to let me see. Let me bring him up. Michael, good day.
What's up, Latoya? How are
How
you,
you?
my sister?
I'm good. You know what? I'm very excited. I'm happy that you're on here. I'm happy that you came on to share your story. I know you have various platforms, and I do want you to share that as well. And I can always put it in the comments. But I know you're not going to be on here to talk about India. But you heard me tell the people that we was in India for three
Right.
weeks back in, like, I don't know when it was, 2007, 2008. I don't know. But yeah,
2008. 2008.
2008. Yeah, yeah. But it was a good time, and I know your story is going to bless a lot of people. Um, and I forgot. Listen, Michael's from New Jersey, or lives in New Jersey right now. So we always shout out the New Jersey folks. So, but North Jersey. I'm from South Jersey, but still. But I'm
Yeah,
gonna move
born
out
and
the way.
raised. Born
Born
and
and raised
raised.
in Jersey.
Born and raised in Patterson. I don't live there anymore, but born and raised in Patterson.
All right,
Represent
boom.
Patterson.
North Jersey, right? Yes, I'm from South Jersey. We got to, we know it's two different
Right.
places. Yeah, okay. All right, but I'm gonna move out the way. I'm gonna let you share your story. If you got a copy of the book, make sure you hold that up too. I know I posted it earlier, but we'll just
Sure.
go forward from there. Okay.
Sure.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, so good evening, everybody. Hope all is well, whether you're East Coast, West Coast, wherever you are. I know it's 6 o'clock Central Standard Time, 7 Eastern Standard. Thank you to my sister Latoya for bringing me on here. Yeah, we went to school, went to Drew over there, the school in the woods over there in Madison, New Jersey, and had a blast out in India. After about the second week there, we were tired of the curry and we were looking for a McDonald's. But anyway, man, it's a privilege to be on here tonight. And I want to say right from the onset that I only know how to be one way. And I thank God for that. It took me a long time to learn this, but authenticity is important to me. And you'll see why. You'll see why. Because a lot of people go from the cradle to the grave living a life of pretenses and a life smiling in public while suffering in private. And I lived that life for a while. So let me jump right into it. I'm originally born and raised in Paterson, New Jersey, as I said. I went to Eastside High School. For those that are old enough to remember the movie Lean On Me, the story of Principal Joe Clark. I went to that school. I was a good athlete at that school, thought I was going to get certain scholarships for different sports. I ended up not getting those things. So I left school in my senior year. I left school and went into the military. I mean, thank God I have a bunch of degrees now. I don't say that to impress you, but I say it's not so much how you start, but it's how you finish the race, right? The race is not given to the swift or to the strong, but to those who endure to the end. So thank God that I have that education now, was able to get it later in my life. But point being, after high school, when I left high school, I was a little bit jaded because I didn't get scholarships and all that. So I went into the United States Army. And a couple of years in my beginning years, I experienced a life-threatening deployment in a hostile environment on the border of Central America. I was in that environment for 6 months and just concentrated hostility. I mean, can you imagine, if you haven't been there, just imagine not knowing what's going to happen one minute to the next with, all kind of things happening all around you. And in that environment, since I was a younger troop, I watched the older troops, some of the sergeants and all, and this is not a slight to the United States military in any way at all, but it's just a reality of what some people do in that kind of hostile deployment just to be able to function, right? Because you can't have a regular heart in that environment. You have to have a heart of stone. And so people begin to anesthetize in different ways, use different substances, alcohol, whatever, just to get numb, We used to have a phrase to say, today is the day to get our head up in case today is the day for us to get wet up, meaning get hit, and possibly even die. So the mindset was that if today was your day to get wet up, then you wouldn't even feel it when it happened anyway. The problem with that is that when I came out of that environment, I came out with minor physical scars, but I came out with a major psychological scarring, and I still stayed in the Army for some years later, and continued to be successful and rise up the ranks and make sergeant, and was climbing to the other sergeant ranks. But I was still dealing now with this monster that had started over on the border of Nicaragua in that hostile environment. And I didn't know what addiction was or anything, substance abuse. I just knew that I needed to be out of my head so that I could function with what I was being asked to do. And I've learned that sometimes you can be in a predicament and you do certain things in a predicament just to get through that season. And when you come out of the season, you don't realize that stuff begins to follow you, because you may be done with it, but it may not be done with you. And when I continued on in the Army, I would have, situations where I would continue to anesthetize, and I was suffering in secret. That's one of the main points too I want to get across to you guys here. I was suffering in secret. Eventually, because I was a leader, and had a lot of troops following me and under me that I was responsible for. So even when I was going through my changes and didn't know what this addiction thing was doing with me, they'd see me with a smile on my face when I was giving them orders and leading them in different ways. But in my private time, I was suffering like, man, what is going on with me? Why can't I stop doing this craziness? But I couldn't bring myself to tell anybody because and my mindset was that I had so many people depending on me. So I suffered in silence for a long time. Fast forward a couple more years, same situation, but still being successful. And this is another point I want to get across. You can still be hugely successful in the public eye, but in private, you know that you're living in your own hell of sorts. And man, that's it. Oh my God, I can't even describe what that's like. It's not that you're trying to be a hypocrite and live this dualistic life. It's just like kind of a vice grip or a vortex that you're caught up in, that you're just caught up, period. So eventually I got out the military with honors and all. And my mindset, I was like, okay, I'm going to go back home. I'm done with this craziness. I'm going to be a New Jersey State Trooper. You know, I fit the bill. I'm 6'2". And at that time, I was 250 ripped up. I won't tell you what my post-COVID weight is because they ain't none of your business. But, but the point is that when I came back home, I was still going through those things in my mind. Now I'm around my mom and my dad, and I'm around people that I love the most and that I know love me. But I had this craziness going on in my head that I just couldn't put into context. I didn't know what was going on. So again, I chose to suffer in silence and use my military tactics and all. And I became homeless. Not that I didn't have somewhere to go. I had all kinds of people who loved me, like I just said, but I didn't want to bring, or I tried not to bring, the craziness that was going on in my life upon them. So I lived in the streets. I used my military tactics to live on the land, and and cover myself up and camo. You'd be surprised, up in the park and all kind of craziness that I held on to. People just didn't know that about me for a long time. That was part of the secret that I never told in my testimony. But you can only suffer in silence for so long because Latoya is a clinician. She knows this well. Pain of any kind that's not processed goes underground, but not away. That means it goes down on the inside of you somewhere. And as you continue to live life and learn how to function at a certain level, you could still be functioning, but still be dysfunctional on the inside. On the outside, you could, to the world, you could be functioning in a successful way, but on the inside, there's all kind of deep dysfunction going on. And as it continues to go unaddressed, these layers begin to pile up and pile up and pile up. And eventually, given the right set of circumstances, the right set of life circumstances that squeeze in on you, nobody is beyond being susceptible or falling victim to the power of unaddressed pain, And mine caught up with me. And there I was in the streets and just messed up, back and forth for a couple of years to the Veterans Hospital, getting counseling, you name it. I'll digress right there if you want to jump in, Latoya, or do you want me to continue to go on with my story?
You can keep going. You can just.
Okay, I'm going to keep going. And so I'm living in the streets. I'm back and forth to my parents' house, and I'm around people that love me. Again, I'm trying to keep this madness away from me. I remember a time I went to my dad's house. I had been out in the street for a couple of days, man, just out there. I was looking like somebody wild. I remember going to my dad's house and wow, just reflecting on that is blowing me away right now. I went to his house and he opened the door just partially, a couple inches, and he looked at me. I guess I was looking so bad. He said, I just want to come in, get something to eat, get some sleep, whatever, and kind of replenish and just, get away from them to not bring all the craziness on them again. My dad said to me, he said, I don't know who you are, but when my son comes home, he said, when my son comes home, I'll let him in. And I walked away. I remember that day it was freezing cold outside New Jersey, and I didn't hold that against him. He didn't understand. I didn't understand. None of us understood what was going on, but that silent suffering was killing me on the inside. So again, eventually I went to the Veterans Hospital. I got some help there, and somebody in the Veterans Hospital recommended that I go to this other facility up in Marshtown, New Jersey, and because they had heard me talk about spirituality. I believe that I believed in, and I continue to believe that the only reason that I made it out of that military situation on the border of Nicaragua because other people didn't come back the way I came back. Some people came back zipped up in black bags, and other people came back maimed and all that. And God let me come back physically in one piece, but psychologically in pieces. But I was still back nonetheless, and I still had more of a chance than a lot of people did. And so that's when I began to examine this whole God thing. I said, somebody kept me alive for a reason. And then in the streets, I was saying also, somebody, somewhere. You know, I grew up in a Christian home, you know, Southern Christian. I hear my mom talking about Jesus can make a way out of no way. And I'd be in my homeless state. Yeah, like, yeah, where's this Jesus at now? Why isn't he making a way for me? You know, but I didn't understand the concept of faith and work then, that you got to put some work into, draw close to him, and he'll draw close to you. I learned these things later on down the road. So they told me about this place in Morristown, New Jersey, called the Market Street Mission. Shout out to the Market Street Mission. You're forever close to my heart. Because that place combines the best of both worlds, clinical counseling and Christianity, faith counseling. And then they have pastors coming in that preach and what have you. And it's a residential place. And I went there. I humbled myself. I realized this. I realized that what I was dealing with was beyond my intellectual capability. Because I always figured if it's a matter of thinking, you know, God's given me a very good brain. I can think my way out of pretty much any situation. But I knew this was something spiritual. This was much more deeper than my ability to help. Not that I couldn't help myself to a certain extent, but the help that I could give myself was limited. Excuse me. So I went to that place, and my life changed there. My life changed there. I accepted Christ once I began to understand what that means as these pastors came in and they taught. Shout out to the man that eventually became my pastor and is still my pastor, even from a distance, the Reverend Dr. Jerry M. Carter Jr. at Calvary Baptist Church in Morristown. He's my pastor. He's my brother. He's my friend forever. And God used him in a huge, huge way in my life at that time, especially because he was one of the pastors that was coming in, and he would sit down and have a conversation with me and say, man, listen, man, you got all kind of potential, man, but you got to let God give you the breakthrough in these different areas. I can see God using you in some powerful ways. So shout out, Rev. Appreciate you, man. Love always. I went through that program there, and I was locked in. Just like when I was given military assignments, I would be locked in. I was locked in. When I understood that Jesus was my Lord and my Savior and had the power to help me break these chains, these spiritual chains that I was dealing with, I was locked in. I wasn't going to let anything distract me from getting everything that place could offer me. And I maximized it. I finished the program, 9 months there. The leadership there asked me if I would stay on in leadership because they saw that men would gravitate to me because, again, I had been a military leader. So I'm a leader of people, but I'm a leader of men especially. And men started to follow, and they offered me a job. And I told them that I began to sense, oh, here it is. I began to sense at that time, LaToya, that pain in and of itself is more than just pain. And what I mean by that is that there's the initial shock and the initial abruptness of pain that paralyzes our forward progress because we don't understand it. But once we begin to think about what we're going through, right? Perception, and perspective, not just what we go through, but how we see what we go through and how we interpret what we go through. Once I began thinking about my pain like that, I began to see that this pain was more than just something happening to me. It could very well be something happening for me right now. Because even going through the military, okay, they conditioned me to be a soldier. I was a good soldier. I do good in those disciplined environments. I was able to rise up the ranks real quickly. I do well in that structure. I could thrive in that. So that wasn't a big deal. But now I started to think that everything that had happened, that I initially thought had happened to me, God could possibly have been using to happen for me to help reveal to me exactly what I'm made of and what He's put inside of me. And when I began to understand that, oh my God, my world opened up. My world opened up. Another one of my mentors, he's gone on to the other side of life now, Reverend Dr. Solomon J. Tividay. He was also from India, but I met him in Morristown, New Jersey, ironically enough. That man poured more counseling know-how and more information that helped me to know myself into me than anybody else I've ever met in my life up to this point. And he said to me one day, he said this in a counseling session. He said, Mike, he talked like this with, I'm not mocking him. I'm just, the way he talks it. He said, Mike, you have tremendous potential, but you're holding yourself back because you're fearful. You're fearful. And I said, well, what am I fearful of? He said, you're fearful of who you can be on the other side of your pain. You're fearful of who you can be on the other side of your pain. He said, the pain, what you've been through, has now, you've been in it so long that the abnormal has now become normal and it's become a sort of comfort to you. And I learned that too over the years, that if you stay in something long enough, even if it's crazy difficult in the beginning, if you stay in it long enough, after a while, the abnormal will become normal and it'll short circuit our full God-given potential and our forward progress. And those are some of the things that I go deep into in the book. Deep into. This man taught me that. He said this quote to me that also unlocked, God used to unlock a whole lot in my life. He said, when the pain of where you are is greater or more powerful than the fear of where you have the potential to go, then you'll move. Then you'll move. Because pain and fear are both dual motivators, right? Meaning they motivate us one way or the other. They either paralyze our forward progress or they propel us, push us into directions in life and places in life that we never dreamed that we'd be able to go. And whether it happens in the way of fear, or whether it happens in the way of paralyzing us or propelling us, it's all based on our perception, how we see it. Once I stopped seeing all that happened to me, or all that I thought was something that was happening to me, when I turned that switch on and started seeing it as something that God was using now to happen for me and to really reveal to me who I am and my full God-given potential, my world opened up. My whole life opened up, and I got on the path to becoming this guy who I am right now and who I'm still becoming. But everything changed once I understood that. And once I stopped saying, why God? And I started saying, okay, God, you permitted it. What has this come to teach me? You allowed it to come into my life. What has this come to teach me? Whether I caused it because of my own faulty decisions, or whether external stimuli, the world squeezed on in me, and other people caused my pain. The fact of the matter is that what happened. And life is less about what happens to us, not to minimize, the horrific things that happen to people every single day. But at the end of the day, life is less about what happens to us and more about what we do after it happens. Are we going to just let it paralyze our forward progress, or are we going to let it take the power out of that pain and make it pay us back and use it to propel us and push us in directions in life that we only dreamed that we could go? So, started working in that program. And then ministry started coming about. I started sensing that God wanted to use me in ministry. I went to school, and 1 degree, 2 degree, 3 degrees later, all with a theology and counseling angle. All the degrees are woven in somewhere, some way or another. They all connect to theology, knowing God more, or the study of God, and also counseling and helping people, pastoral care and counseling, etc. And then God started opening doors for me to serve and direct nonprofit programs. Served with Covenant House for homeless youth for 8 years as their pastoral minister, counselor, manager, coordinator, blah 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 blah, all that. A bunch of different places where the least of these are. I've been in the trenches doing that kind of ministry for 25 years, while also preaching over at Calvary Baptist in Morristown under Pastor Jerry Carter's leadership and tutelage, and I've had the privilege to preach and teach all over the Northeast and in other places, all the way over to Jamaica, and all of that was because of being under the auspices of Reverend Dr. Jerry M. Carter Jr. So for 25 years, over 25, yeah, right around 25 years now, that's what I've been doing, and in the process, God's blessed me to write a few books, and for 12 years, I was I didn't sign up for this at all. I spoke somewhere one day, and in the audience, it just happens to be the guy who ended up being the chaplain of the New York Giants football and New York Yankees baseball, George McGovern. And he pulled me to the side, and George spoke to me, and he said that, God really spoke to me through you. And I could see that you were an athlete, and that I think that you can help my guys. And he was talking about the Giants football and other NFL teams that come this way to play New York Giants. And he said right there on the spot, he said, would you consider being on my team as one of my chapel speakers and spiritual leaders for the team? And I said, yeah. So I started doing that. I did that for 12 years straight, and had a chance to minister to all those guys there. Three different Giant Super Bowl teams. I was there for all that, and just pouring into them, teaching what I'm teaching right here, just from the scripture. And that's my story in a nutshell. So in the world's eyes, I've had success, if you will, for all these years. But what I want to come back to is this. Along the way of these 25 years, remember I said pain, unprocessed, unaddressed pain, goes underground, but not away. It goes underground, but not away. So in every facet of my life, and I don't say this as if I'm some kind of a martyr, I'm just saying this is the lot in life that God gave me. In every facet of my life, I have people dependent on me. And this has been for 25 years now. I can't walk down the street without somebody wanting, saying, can you help me get into this program? Can you counsel me? Can you help me this way? That's the lot that God gave me in life, and if I could summarize it, I'll call it, it's a burdensome joy. It's that oxymoron right there. It's a blessing to be able to help people like that, but it's a burden when you have a certain kind of heart, because sometimes I don't know how to turn it off. And self-care became a problem for me, and I was just locked into helping, especially having gone through all the craziness that I went through in the military. This was like me kind of trying to make up for lost time. Now I'm going to help the world. I'm going to save the world. I'm going to save the world. I'm going to let Jesus use me to save the world. And I found out that you can lose yourself in that process trying to save the world. If you believe in irony, ironically enough, today, the 28th of September, 12 years ago, and you know how Facebook shows you the things that you said years ago and they give you a reminder? Well, the one that I read today was from 12 years ago, September 28, 2009. And it said, this is me talking. It said, I'm taking a break today. I'm taking it easy. And remember, pastors, leaders, therapists, whoever, people, take care of yourself. Self-care, make self-care a priority, or something to this effect. I'm paraphrasing because I'm not reading it word for word, but something to that effect. And then I said, because we only get one life on this side, and if you just pour yourself out altogether into other people and continue to do that without self-care, you end up drying up. And remember, we only get one life on this side. That's what I said 12 years ago to this day right here. And the number 12 in biblical numerology means full circle, right? 12 o'clock is full circle. 12 tribes, full circle. 12, the number 12. So 12 years ago to this day, God's bringing me full circle on this platform to share this with you. That unprocessed pain goes underground, but not away. Because I had some residue of unprocessed pain that ended up catching up with me again, even in the last couple of years. And some pastors, some preachers, other people, leaders, they may not share this kind of thing because of reputation and all that kind of stuff there. I understand that. I understand that. And that's the very thing that kept me suffering in silence for a long time. In 2014, so mind you, when I went in that program in Marshtown, that was in 1994. Um, so I went 20 years without using substances, any of that kind of stuff right there, because I was just thriving, hitting on all cylinders, serving over at Calvary and doing stuff with the NFL and writing these books and being booked to speak all over the place and with my family and all. And I mean, things were hitting on all cylinders. I bought the first house, bought the second house, and all the life was going great. Um, but there was still some unresolved stuff in me, and you can hide out in your success for only so long. Not that you're intending to do that, but it's just that you don't even know that there's still things down there that's unresolved. And then in 2014, so that's 20 years from 94 to 2014. In 2014, one of my brothers, my blood brother, Ron, committed suicide. I'm not using that as an excuse for anything, but I'm telling you that that's a reality. That's a painful reality. And in my book, one of the steps in my book is abandon all excuses. If you're going to transform your pain into purpose, you have to abandon all excuses. So I'm not using an excuse, but I'm talking about my reality. Because when he died, now all of a sudden, when he killed himself, now all of a sudden, my family is thrusted into this new normal. And I remember like it was yesterday when we got the call, immediately, I'm the go-to person now. And again, not from a martyr's perspective, and I'm not saying woe is Mike. I'm just telling you my story. The calls started coming in for me to help do this, that, and the other, set things up. All the rest of that, go down to all of it. Talk to funeral directors, plan the funeral, all that, even down to preaching the funeral with the casket in front of me, and my brother in it, and looking over the casket into my mom and dad's eyes. I'm the go-to guy for all that. So what I had to do was check my emotions at the door again, so I can go into performance mode and take care of everybody else. But this is my blood brother, just 15 months older than me. We slept in the same bunk beds together. So you talk about suffering in silence. I had to eat that and stuff it, because every mom and dad and everybody else was in all kind of pain, and I had to let God use me to help alleviate their pain and help us to get through that season. So all that pain went underground. That and pain from other situations, just life. You can throw all kind of factors in there. But I learned to put a little smile on my face, stand on those platforms, still preach, still teach, still help the people, because that's where my heart was. But inside, I was dying slowly, man. I was dying slowly. So all I'm going to say is that from 2014, it started happening, and it went, a couple years. Around 2017, 2016, middle 2016, toward the end of 2016, it started catching up with me. And I made some bad decisions during that time, because life squeezed me in some ways. Things that I thought that I was long done with weren't done with me, because I mastered the art, so I thought, of stuffing them down, and not even remembering my own advice that pain goes underground but not away. Unprocessed pain goes underground but not away. And in the season that all this stuff has happened in the last couple of years, I've been in one of the worst places in my life. It was one of the worst storms of my life, and some of my uncalculated decisions. I'll say uncalculated because of life's external stimuli squeezing in on me. And now here I am again, a leader in a powerful church in New Jersey, and I'm heading up the counseling ministry there. And I was going to work and making it happen, and doing my best to take care of the people and do my assignment. But after work, suffering down in here, looking at my family, couldn't force myself to let them know that I was suffering. My boys, my sons, Dad, um, dad's their hero. Dad's their hero. But um, they couldn't understand that, I couldn't tell them that dad was dealing with some kind of kryptonite. That their Superman had some kind of kryptonite. So um, I just fought it, fought, and kept going to work, and and kept thriving in public and dying in private. Until eventually stuff just imploded. Again, I won't go into all the details, but it ended up hurting. It ended up hurting some of the people that I love the most. Some of the people that I love the most. Um, the only solace that I found during that season is that is when the scripture talks about David, God called David a man after his own heart. Um, Even though people didn't know what I was dealing with, because in the public again, I was thriving and doing what I love to do. In private, I was dying and suffering. And even in my own household, they didn't know I was suffering. And I would privately go off to the VA hospital without them knowing it and say, "Hey, man, I'm struggling. I'm struggling. I need help." Um, so again, it ended up having some major impact, you know, on my family and on the people that I love the most. Even you know, some of my friends and colleagues and all, and other preachers and all. I know just didn't know um, what I was dealing with, because I couldn't bring myself to say it, because I know that I have so many people depending on me. So there I was stuck again, and and eventually I had to talk about the exact nature of what it was, to my family, to people I served with, and all, and talk about the hardest thing that I've ever had to do in my life. You know, um, and I'd be lying if I said it didn't. It did some damage. Um, but that was a couple years ago. Not to minimize the effect that it had on my family and on other people. That was a couple years ago, and so I'm in a so much better place. I told Latoya when we got on behind the scenes, she asked how I am. I said, man, right now I'm better now than I've ever been before. You know why? Because I don't have to carry that secret anymore. I'm free. I'm more freer now than I've ever been. I'm more effective now at doing what God has called me to do and gifted me to do now than I've ever been. Because there's no pretense, and I don't have anything down on the inside that I have to be guilty about now. It's out there, and that's the thing about talking about your secrets. When you put it out there, you take the power back from it. You take the power back. You take the power back. You get back in control again. And man, I'm just so grateful right now. Oh man, I'm just so you know, the spiritual warfare is real. And yeah, our decisions have a lot to do with it too. But, you know, don't ever make the mistake of thinking that you're beyond. Don't ever make the mistake of thinking that because of where you are in life, because of who you are in life, because of what you have and your degrees and your titles and all that kind of stuff, what people call you and things of that nature, that you are beyond the vicissitudes and the vices of this life. Because given the right set of circumstances in terms of life elements coming together, the best of us can fall. The best of us can fall. But what the Lord showed me in the midst of this situation here is that the fall doesn't cancel out the call. As a matter of fact, to some extent. The fall even enhances the call. I know in my case, I had been holding that load for so long, I had to break down in order to get a breakthrough. That's what happened in my life. And I'm so sorry that, it had to impact the lives of other people. But, God didn't let me die in the middle of this craziness. And I'm not just saying like I was out in the street running crazy. I was a homeowner and everything, and driving nice cars and all that, but functioning, but dying on the inside. Dying on the inside. The fall doesn't cancel out the call. If I can put my preaching hat on right now, I hear Jesus saying to Peter, Simon, Simon, Satan has desired to sift you as wheat, but I prayed for you that your faith would not fail. Now, most people would want, okay, Jesus, if you know that this attack is coming, then man, do something about it. Keep it from happening. Get in the front of it and block it. Keep it from happening. Jesus didn't say that. He didn't do that for Peter because he knew that whatever was going to happen in that, Romans 8:28, all things work for the good of those who love God, called according to the purpose. All God uses what the devil meant for evil, God will bring some good out of it. So he says, Simon, Simon, Satan has desired you to sift you as wheat, but I prayed for you. Would you pray, Jesus? Would you pray that he wouldn't have to go through it? No, I pray that your faith would not fail when you go through, meaning I'm going to let you go through it because there's an assignment on the other side of it. Your fall won't cancel out the call because Jesus goes on to say, I prayed for you. I pray that your faith would not fail. And then on the backside of that, he said, and when you return, not if you return, but when you return, strengthen your brothers and your sisters. Meaning that there was purpose in that right there. There was purpose woven into it somehow or another. And you know what? If Peter hadn't gone through what he went through, he wouldn't have been strong enough to stand up and be the one who preached the first sermon to launch the church at Pentecost when the fire fell down. So I'm saying that there's a spiritual warfare element to this too, where God uses the evil that enters our lives, and even not just the enemy external, but the enemy INNER, me, that thing that causes doubt and causes us to make bad decisions from time to time. God uses all of that to push us further into our full God-given potential. So the last thing I'm going to say here right now before I digress and pass it back over to Latoya is this. Latoya, through it all, what I've learned is this. My pain wasn't for nothing. My pain literally has laid the platform that's propelled me deeper into my life's purpose. And I digress right there for now until you ask me to come back on again.
Mike, thank you. Listen, I'm listening to everything that you shared. And of course, there's a lot that, I don't know, but even the fullness of it. And I was trying to keep up with what you were saying and post it as you went. But I thank you so much. And of course, you can come back anytime you want. But I thank you so much for sharing that story. And before we came on the live, we talked about it and we prayed. I said, man, you're going to help a lot of people just by sharing your story, but especially the men, in a sense that, like you said, a lot of times um, men are looked at, not just men, but women too, but looked at like this strong, can't break. Like you said, I had to be there for you're preaching your brother's funeral. I had to be there for my family. I had to be there for all the people. I could walk down the street, and people will stop me and pull on me. But sometimes when you're aching, people don't notice that. It's like they want to come and you called it a burden. You called it something, and I can't remember how you said it.
Yeah, I
A
said
blessing
ministry for
burden.
me, it's a burdensome joy. It's a blessing on one hand, but it's a heavy mantle to wear also.
Hmm. Yeah, but even as you're talking, even the more so, and I know this, it's like you're obviously called to this work and called to do it. Just the way that
Sure.
you've blessed so many people, not just and we talked about this, not just in the four walls of the church and the congregation, but out in the streets, from the nonprofit to whomever. Um, but I thank you for sharing that part of the story. And like I said, especially the part where it just became so heavy. Like I gotta take care of myself, this self-care piece. I gotta pull on people, because you name little things. I say this all the time, whether it be, in the counseling office or on here. You can give us one or two things, not just you, I'm saying people. It could be one thing that would be too much. But when we talk about pain and lives, we can name a lot of stuff sometimes, some of us,
Sure.
that, man,
Sure.
all this compounded, all this together and not processed, not touched, not spoken, that becomes too heavy for anybody to bear alone. So it's okay to reach out, and it's okay to say, I need help. It's okay to, like you said, the fall doesn't cancel the call. You know what I mean? If I made a mistake, I can get up from here and keep pressing forward. Right.
Sure. Sure.
Um, you said again a lot of great things, but something that stood out for me, one of them, when you talked about going to um knocking on the door and your father answering,
Yeah.
and him saying, man, I don't know
When
who you are, but when my son comes, I'll let him in. I'll let you know. Like, I can't, like, even as you're talking, I'm thinking that had to be heartbreaking for him too. Did your father ever talk about that moment?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. Listen. My father is my best friend now. Like, he's my biggest cheerleader. Once the evolution happened and the Lord started, using me in different ways and putting me on all these platforms, I would look up and my dad's sitting right there.
Mhm.
I had the privilege of leading my dad to the Lord. Because my dad
Man,
went
that's
through
awesome.
his own storms. I won't put his stuff out here on social media, but growing up in life, he went through his own storms, and I mean, he had to come to terms with the fact that he needed God in his life too. And so, uh, yeah, I remember I did a men's ministry event in Patterson, New Jersey. I forget the church it was, but it was probably about 400 men in that church, and I preached about how Jacob wrestled with God. I called it "It's Time for the Wrestling Match." How Jacob wrestled with God, and he wrestled with God so hard because he didn't want to give up being who he was, because who he was all he knew. Who am I going to be on the other side of this? And that's a fearful thing to men, and that's why we do it to save face, because we don't, who am I going to be on the other side of rendering myself vulnerable? People are going to see me weak and all this other stuff. So instead of that, people will suffer in silence. Well, my dad came forward for the altar call, and he was raising his hand saying, "I'm Jacob. I need to change. I'm Jacob." And so we had that moment. Yeah, and we've had that discussion. I've laughed and joked, and I said, "Man, you were wrong, right? When you didn't let me in that day." I said, "When you come to my house, I'm gonna do that to you when you come to my house one day." But no, no, my dad's my man. God's brought us full circle, and I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's awesome, and I think, like, even immediately when you said that too, I thought that hurt you, and that had to hurt your father probably just the same. You know what I mean? To
Yeah.
be able to say you can't come in, but it sounds like that was a changing point for you from there to, I need to get some help. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
sometimes when we look back at it, where you said, okay, change happens when the pain becomes greater than the fear. Let me move my
Hmm.
hands so you can see it. but 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 I'm wondering, had he let you in that day, I mean, your change could have came, but, like, we don't know how God was gonna do it, but you may have missed it on that turn. You know what I'm saying? Like, had he let you in that day, you may not have got the help that you needed so that you
Yeah.
can come
No.
out. Yeah.
No. Point taken. Point taken. I think we're
Mhm.
both frozen. All right. Am I frozen on your screen too?
No, you're not frozen. You're
Oh, we're
fine.
both frozen here. Well,
Well,
anyway,
now you're
okay.
frozen for a second. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, you're
okay.
fine. Yeah.
No, but point taken. No, you're right. And I did make some decisions that day. I didn't go and get the help on that day, but it definitely caused a change in my thinking. Plus, it was
Mhm.
freezing that night. I was like, man, I can't keep doing this. This is crazy out here.
Yeah.
So right then and there, I started thinking about in a more serious way making some changes.
And then going from there, like you said, okay, I go to this market mission, or like, whatever that was, and you
Right.
went there, going to nonprofits, and then a call to ministry. So being in that church with that same pastor that you mentioned,
Yeah.
helping so many people to being one of the chaplains for the New York Giants, um, to preaching and doing speaking engagements. But I love what you say too, like keeping it absolutely real, knowing that we are all human. Like, when you don't deal with it, some things are going to come back up, or such as life. Sometimes difficult times will come, no matter how successful you are, no matter how much money you have, no matter the titles that you have, no matter how great the sun is shining, sometimes things will just come. Right.
Absolutely.
And sometimes, and I love the fact that you talked about that it doesn't mean that you're ever exempt, but, we have to be able to handle those situations. A lot of times handling it is reaching out for some help. So do
Yeah.
you think that from what you're saying too, um, you kind of went a little bit longer than you need, like, hindsight, I probably should have reached for somebody before, but you were just saying, I had so many people leaning on me, from your immediate family to your extended
Yeah.
family,
Yeah. Yeah.
community.
Yeah, and it's all about conditioning too. I was conditioned. You remember, I was in a I was conditioned to be a combat soldier. I was conditioned growing up in one of the roughest projects, housing projects in New Jersey. I was conditioned by the streets initially, and then I was conditioned in the military to be this fight machine. Never let them see you cry. Don't shed no tears, no matter how. Even if you get wounded, you keep trying to fight through it. And so that mentality carries over into real life. And so even though God had, was starting to make these changes in me, I'm still that person to a certain extent, still conditioned to a certain extent to function that way. To never, to listen, you got to find a way, suck it up, man, and find a way to still make this happen and fight your way out of this situation. But spiritual warfare is a whole different thing. It's like, it's not just something that you can just think your way out of. And you have to reach out. You have to reach out. You have to reach out. And reaching out to your point, Latoya, reaching out was one of the most difficult things that I ever had to do, but it was one of the best things that I've ever done now, done in my life. And even sharing this here, on this platform, it's a sort of catharsis, even further catharsis to a certain extent, which is where, I'm saying, where this book came from. The Lord squeezed this out of me. Your pain, everybody's pain. Who's ever listening to this and whoever will watch this, doesn't matter if you're a pastor, or preacher, or stay-at-home mom, or a teenager. Pain is pain. Pain of any kind. If you don't deal with it, it will deal with you. I don't care who you are. And so, and when it comes, not if it comes, when it comes, you live long enough, it will come. When it comes, you have a decision to make as to whether or not you're going to let it just paralyze you, or you're going to take the power out of the pain and use it to propel you and bring something good out of it. And that's what God did with me with this book right here. Actually, all three books that I wrote, the process was similar, but this one in a more concentrated way, just really explaining in detail all the different stages that you go through in order to transform your pain into purpose and meaning.
Yeah. And I'm glad you held the book up. I did while you were talking. I was listening to everything you were saying, but I did order the book
Oh,
from
cool.
your website. Your website is really dope too. That's a nice website. So
Appreciate it.
MikeBethune.com, I went and I ordered my copy. I'm gonna hold you to it. You said I'm gonna get it in like 2 or 3 days. So I believe that my book's coming.
I said, hold on. Let's put that into context. I said I will send it out within
You
2 to 3 days.
send it.
I will
Okay,
send it
got you,
out.
got you, got you. Okay, I'm gonna hold you that one. Okay, so 2 to 3
Yeah.
days it will
Hey,
be in the mail.
Latoya, if I can real quick, I want to say this too. And I'll drop the links. I'll drop the links myself here in the bottom of this as well once we're done. But if you guys, whoever's on here, if you go to buy the book, I mean, do yourself a favor and buy the book, because hopefully what's been said has blessed you in some ways too. But buy the book, because I really go into detail and use not only my personal experience, but also counseling know-how in layman's terms, in plain English, to show you how to walk through these different stages. And this book is beneficial to, you have teenagers that are dealing with different kinds of pain, that will deal with pain. It doesn't matter from what the age, where they are along the age spectrum. This is applicable to everybody. And I also developed this into a online digital course, and I'll drop the link to that too, where while you're taking the course, you have me right there with you in audio. I provide an hour and a half of audio, and I'm literally coaching you through every single step in detail. So I'll drop that link as well. And the last thing I'll say is, I also have converted it into a workshop, and I'm getting ready to take it on the road everywhere because people a lot, especially in this season here, people are in pain that they've never had to deal with before. And so, Latoya, I'm gonna put this out there. I'd be glad if Texas was my first stop. That's all I'm
Oh,
gonna
that's
say.
awesome. That's awesome. Okay. We have to chat about it. I'm gonna be glad too.
Cool,
We have to chat
cool.
about it. Um, there's a couple things, and thank you for sharing all that. Like I said, I did get my
Sure.
book. I saw somebody ask the question what the website is for the book. His website is amazing. But and I like to say, I watched your Facebook group. Well, I look at that, and you're very creative, like in general, about even how you're sending these messages out, like the ministry you're using, whether it be the T-shirts or the books or the speaking or what have you. So I love that part of it.
Thank you.
Um, a couple things I want to touch on before we hop off.
Hmm.
And again, well, I got three things that I don't want to forget. One, I remember you saying in the beginning, like the movie Lean on Me. If anybody have seen it, I think by now we've all have seen it. But like, what was it, Joe Clark? But that was the principal, right? So you're saying that's the school that you went to, and you just said I'm from one of the toughest housing projects in New Jersey. So that movie Lean on Me, where the guy was putting the chains, for people who don't know, on the doors in the movie. I don't know if that was real life, but the movie where they hyped it up and it was just a tough environment. You're saying that's where you were
That's
from.
where I grew up at. That's where I
Yeah.
was conditioned at. That's my high school. I walked those same halls where Joe caught those guys in the bathroom singing and
Yeah.
all that. That group, those are dudes from around the way. That group, singing group Riff. They ended up going national. We know all those people. Half the movie were people from the hood. That's my school. Go Ghosts, Eastside Ghosts. The school, ironically enough, is built over a graveyard. That's where our
Oh,
mascot comes from. Eastside High School Ghosts. Yeah, that's my
yeah.
school.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, in the movie, what do you put the chains on the door so people wouldn't come in? Is that what it was? Or
He was putting the chains on the door to keep the drug dealers out, but he
okay,
also caused a fire violation and got himself in trouble.
got you. Okay. Um, yeah, Lean on Me is the movie. It's a really great movie. And then I want to talk about too, I know you talked about your time in the military, but yeah, it was good. Okay, so singing as adults, yeah, it's good. Um, I want you to also talk about, I know you kind of touched on it, you don't have to dive deep into it, but just talking about sometimes unexpected things occur. And I'm sorry to hear about, I know you shared it with me before I read it, like your brother's death, but in 2014, but just how hard that is of
Hmm.
dealing with those incidents again. So it's sometimes it's not, it's things that are outside of our control,
That's right.
that may come and shift and bring about this pain. So a lot of times in the process of healing, we have to learn how to forgive ourselves for things that we do that we just don't know, and then learn how to cope with situations that again are outside of our control and completely unexpected, and something as difficult and painful as losing, like you said, we're 15 months apart. So you guys were in them same halls and the same, playing the same games outside, and how hard that must have been for you and your family.
Yeah.
And a lot
Yeah.
of that was grieving. So what I hear you saying too was hard for you to grieve while
Yeah. It
trying to
is.
hold everybody else up.
It is. It is. It is because I'm again how I'm wired. I'm programmed to go immediately into action mode and start fixing things.
Mhm,
and
mhm,
and forget that some things have been broken in me in the process, in his suicide and in the military and all that. It's a proclivity that I have, that I still have to this day, but I've gotten better at it, in terms of putting boundaries around how much of myself I give out on a daily basis. I'm getting better. It's been a journey for me, but it's been a tough journey because of how I've been conditioned all these years.
mhm. And then also too, what 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 words do you have for anybody, but specifically another male who may be trying to hold it all together, either for his family, for the community. You know what I mean? Like you said, conditioned to think and to move this way. And like Casey said a minute ago, a lot of times we're taught to believe like crying makes you weak. I think people who can openly cry and express themselves are the stronger ones because they're able to show emotions and release. But what
Yeah.
type of words do you have for those men that feel like, I gotta stay focused, gotta keep it moving. Can't show myself as vulnerable because then they'll think I'm weak and a target. What
Yeah.
words do you have for them? Because clearly a lot of those people are experiencing deep pain, but
Sure.
don't know how to articulate it or ask for the help that they need.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'll come full circle to your question. I'll come in the back door.
Mhm.
We live in a society that perpetuates falsehood every single day. right? That conditions people to be phony, you know, to keep a smile on your face and keep
Yeah.
up with the Joneses and all this other kind of stuff, not knowing that the Joneses are going through. The Joneses are a paycheck away from homelessness. The Joneses are, you know, so and we do this, you know, and social media perpetuates that like nothing else. You know, everybody's looking at people's pictures and people, nobody posts their worst pictures, right? Nobody posts themselves on their worst day. So you only see the best of people's lives, a vacation shot or something like that. And somebody who's going through all kind of horrific nonsense and don't even have the money to go on vacation looks at that
Mhm.
and starts comparing themselves, and all of a sudden depression and crazy stuff. I mean, it's a vicious cycle. So but more to your question, to the brothers out there and sisters too, but specifically to the brothers, man, I know what that is. You know, been there, done that, got the t-shirt. That's what I just finished sharing. And what I want to say to you is find somebody, find a person, preferably another brother, but anybody that you can confide in and share the exact nature of what it is that you're holding on to. Because if you don't, your pain goes underground and not away, and pain is progressive. It'll continue to grow, it'll continue to compound. And after a while, you don't want it to come out in some kind of projected way where it ends up, you know, being cathartic onto people that you love that had nothing to do with it, you know, and you don't want it to come out in a way that destroys and really hurts your family. I know what that is too. So find somebody that you can confide in. There's nothing weak. There's nothing, you know, all those terms that we used to use in the hood. You soft, you a punk, you this, you that. Forget all that, man. You know, it's what's soft nowadays is holding it in and not telling somebody exactly what's going on, walking around with a smile on your face when the reality is quite to the contrary. Talk to somebody. Talk to somebody. You know, the real strength is in being able to talk about your truth. You know,
Mhm.
share it and get free, because when you can talk about it, you take the power back from it before it destroys you. So that's what I would share with you.
That's awesome. I like that. Just find somebody that you can talk to. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like step number 1. Like don't hold that burden by yourself and speak to anybody. So I know like obviously the therapist is going to say find a therapist, right? But sometimes it's just about turning to somebody and letting it go. Right?
Yeah.
Now and then taking the steps to finding that therapist. And then the other part too, sometimes for us, I know we all go through our stuff and sometimes it's hard to see somebody else, but also to be aware of our loved ones too when they may be going through. You know what I'm saying? Like so watch listening to what they say and what they don't say, listening to how they act, I mean watching how they act and checking in with our loved ones. Are you okay? Like what's going, especially if you know somebody's dealing with something heavy. How are you doing? You know what I'm saying? Or I'm here for you. Or just be a listening ear. A listening ear does wonders. Like just to be able to sit and allow somebody to speak. And then I think a good way to look at it is think about the times where you just needed to pour and somebody to be there to listen. And
Hmm.
so we can think about what we needed in our deepest, most painful times, being able to give that back to somebody else, and not waiting for somebody all the time to say I'm hurting, but to check in first. Like what's
Yeah.
good, like everything good, what's good, like all that stuff.
Yeah,
So
that's a great point, Latoya. I mean, like, you know, so we all say when we see each other in the morning, how you doing, or good morning, especially when you say, I say how you doing. Most people when they say how you doing, they're not going to stick around to really find out how you doing. That's kind of like a
right.
on the move statement,
Yeah.
but we should be, yeah, we should be more intent, right? More intentional, and have carved out a few minutes of time if the person, really does have something that they want to share. It's kind of like you asked me how I'm doing, and I don't want to give you my whole life story, but I do have something I'd like to share with you and take off of me. But if you're already a block up the street after you said how you doing,
Yeah,
did you really want to know how I was doing?
that's
You
a good
know,
point.
to your
Yeah.
point, be more intentional about paying attention to not just our loved ones, but everybody that we're around. You know, people are struggling, especially in the context of this crazy world that we're living in right now. The way things have shifted, you got more people suffering silently than we know. We haven't even,
Right.
you're a therapist, we haven't even begun to see.
Hmm.
We haven't even scratched the threshold of the people that are coming out of this thing with addictions and afflictions and all kind of craziness that happened while we were sequestered, because the thing about pain is that if it's given a season of isolation, it'll
Yeah.
germinate and it'll morph and it'll turn into something far more crazy than it was when we
Hmm.
were up and functioning.
Yeah. Yeah. And somebody asked you to list the 8 steps real quick, but I want to make sure we answer this question before we move on. Casey asked how often we should check in with somebody else, and I don't know if you want to answer that, or do you want to answer that one? Like, just going with the how often you should check in, or
I mean, I think that we should have everybody. You got to have some healthy outlets. That's the bottom line. You got to have some healthy outlets. You got to have some people in your circle. And there's, as young people say, there's levels to this stuff, right? You got to have some people. Jesus had his inner circle, his inner circle, right? James, John, and Peter, that he could tell anything. And then he had the 12 that he only shared some things with. So you got to have those circles, those different levels that you can share your more intense stuff with. And if they're in place already, your network is in place already, then you don't have to go searching around and looking for somebody to talk to when the critical time happens. It's already in place.
Yeah, and you know what? I like that, and I like that you said that. So the tribe, the circle is already in place, but sometimes if that vulnerability is nurtured in that space, you'll be able to see when something's off, or
That's right.
it's easier to check in. Sometimes, like, hey, what's up? And then that's where the pour happens, or I haven't heard from you, or good morning. And if I feel safe enough, now I can say, you know what, today's not well for me. But when it's nurtured and when it's healthy to say, I don't care if it's a hug, a high five, or I'm not well, if I'm allowed to be, and we can think about the friends we have or family that we have that we can be vulnerable with. When you can be vulnerable in those spaces, it's easier to allow those words to come out.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. And that's spot on, because the tribe, your circle, will pick up on it. If you're in it, if you guys are interacting all the time. I remember a couple of times when I was going through my phases, my mom would say, she said, I can't put my finger on it, but you ain't right, Mike. Something's going on. She just knows, because, when you know somebody and when you spend time around them, they don't have to tell. You can pick up on certain things, and then you can follow up on that and check on them in that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point, Casey made. I think definitely not weak. I think it's healthy when we can say to somebody else that I'm not doing okay. I think that's the healthy, and that's what Mike's talking about. The idea that when the pain becomes greater than the fear of what will they think and what will they say, that's when we get that breakthrough and that release, as opposed to allowing our emotions to guide us to and fro, and then we just stay stuck, and then we just suppress, right? And we're not dealing with anything.
Yeah. Hey, Latoya, I found out that one of the bondages, I think, that's even worse than substance addiction and all that other stuff is the bondage that comes with the fear of other people's opinions of you.
That's a good point.
That's it, man. That's it. Because you live with that every second of every day, whatever space you're in, you live with that. I wonder what they think about me. And then social media exacerbates that to the 100th power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because that's real.
It is.
That's a whole nother. That's real.
That's the thing. Yeah, that's the thing, though. That right there is the stuff that takes you to the other stuff.
Yeah.
And drives you nuts, and then you start getting out of yourself. You know what I mean? And trying to be somebody that you're not.
That's where that shame comes in. Like, what's wrong with me, or what do they think of me? I'm not good enough, and now I'm driven to cope in other ways.
That's right.
Me up.
Exactly.
Yeah, right there. See, so some people are gonna see what's up. Like, some people will we can wear a smile, but then there's some people, like you said, your mom can kind of pick up on something not right. Like, what's going on, right?
Yeah.
Anika wanted to know about the 8. Can you just run through them real quick before we jump off? The 8.
Yeah, the 8 stages. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Okay. So it begins with stage 1 is addressing the fear. That's where everything begins. You can't even move forward until you get unparalyzed from the fear. So stage 1 is addressing the fear. Stage 2 is acknowledging the pain. After you address the fear, you have to acknowledge that it is there. It is real. Whatever happened. Stage 3 is abandon all excuses, whether you cause it or other people cause it. Like you said, abandon the excuses. That's unproductive. Stage 4 is admit the truth. Jesus himself says the truth will set you free. Admit the truth, whether it happened to you or whether your bad decisions cause it. Admit the truth, because when you put the truth out there, it takes the power out of the strength of the bondage, and you get freed up from it. And then that's the pivotal point right there. Those 4 stages right there is the real catharsis part of transforming your pain into purpose. After you admit the truth and for some people it'll take a year to work through these. For others, it'll take it. It depends on where you are. But when you get after you finish stage 4, that's the transition point when things begin to change and you begin to take the power back from the pain that paralyzed you, and now you're turning into something that can propel you into a greater place in life. So stage 5 is accept the new reality, accept right where you are, that it's my life and that it's my journey and that it is what it is. It was what it was, and now I'm ready to move forward. Stage 6 is you have to do an assessment of the loss profit ratio. Okay, maybe in the process, I might have lost some people along the way who don't understand what I went through, why I went through. I can't do anything about that. But it's a loss profit ratio, just like in business. There's some wins and there's some losses. There's some gains and there's some losses. And so when you weigh that out, you can also, stage 6, assess the loss profit ratio. And then in stage 7, you analyze. Now you just start focusing on what's been added to you, because you don't want to focus on the losses necessary, because if you start living in the past again, you miss the present and you have a chance of altering or messing up the future. So now you want to focus on what was added to you. What did my pain bring to me? And that's stage 8. Add up the benefits. Okay, I'm better now. My mom has this song that says, if I never had a problem, I wouldn't know that God could solve them. David said, it was good for me that I was afflicted, now that I might learn the statutes of the Lord. So when you take the power out of pain, you begin to realize that it's added to you a strength that you didn't even know you had until you went through that season. Because if all you can do is see that it paralyzed me, and you get stuck in the woe is me, why is this happening to me? Then you can't see the power in the pain. It's not until the perception changes and you start seeing it differently. Like I told you, Dr. Solomon taught me, when I saw my pain as something that not just happened to me, but now happened for me, you take the power from me, you take the power from it and start making it work for you. And then you realize at stage 8, you add up the benefits. This stuff, all that I went through in the military, literally laid the platform. And what I went through in the streets laid the platform that propelled me into this ministry over 25 years now. I've been able to help, by the grace of God, thousands of people. All these books have come out of all of that. It's produced some good things. There's 10 stages. I might have said 8. I'm sorry. So stage 8 is add up the benefits. Stage 9 is, after you add up the benefits, then it's time to embrace your full ability. Now you know some things about yourself you didn't know on the other side of the storm. Now you know your strength. Now you know what you're made of. Now you know, and you're owning what God has put inside of you. And then stage 10, the only thing left to do is take action, embark. That is to launch out on your purpose. Take action and get out there and launch yourself to the world and give what God gave you, the power that you took back out of that pain. Go out and teach other people. Go out and liberate other people. And now you're walking in your purpose and in meaning in life. And that's what this book shows you in great detail. Make sure, go grab a copy tonight. Grab your book. It's going to bless your life. It's going to change your life. So those are the 10 stages in the book.
All right, look, we got a lot of comments about the book too. Let me see. Then back at stage 1. Okay. So she was just saying that sometimes it takes her a while to get to a different step and then kind of come back. So
yeah. Now, Latoya, to your point, another thing I want to say about the book is that the way I wrote it and the way God showed me how to write it is that not only is it instructional, but to that person's point that says they have to go back over, it's that kind of book. There's 5 pages after each stage that you work through. The first page of the workbook, it's a book workbook. The first page is, how did the stage speak to you? And be very specific. So you got to do some writing and some homework. And there's 5 different pages of different things to do in terms of follow up on each stage after each stage. So it's that kind of a book.
Okay. All right. So you're working through it. It's okay if you get to one to kind of back up and go back until you get into it. Okay. It's not just meant to be read straight through and then
not at all.
Shelf. You got to
not at all. It's a workbook. You can't read just like Shakespeare. You got to put some work into it because we're talking because we're talking about some breakthrough, right? You're reading it for the point. Okay, when you read addressing the fear, okay, you got to put some work in there. You got to identify whatever it is that you've been fearful of, what's been holding you back. And that might take you a while to go through that whole catharsis. But the way I've written it, it instructs you on how to go through it. And even if it takes you a month or 2 months on one stage, it doesn't matter as long as you get the breakthrough before you go to the next step. That's how this book is intended to be worked.
And you're not being timed. You go at your own pace.
Not being timed. Nah, it's at your pace.
Yeah. Awesome. Mike, thank you so much for sharing. Like I said, I ordered my book. Cool. And I'm told it's going to be in the mail 2 to 3 days. So I'm waiting for my book. It's coming. I'm hanging on to that thing. But I thank you so much for sharing. And then if we're blessed enough where you will come back on here, maybe you can just break down those stages even more so, like flesh them out. Like if we have our books, so it could be up to 1 year. Yeah, it could take some time or longer.
Right? Or longer.
Yeah.
It depends on how long you've been in bondage. It depends on the degree of pain that you've been dealing with and how long it's been around.
But we can find your book at MikeBethune.com. Like I said, the website is dope regardless. But make sure you go there, look for the book. I ordered my book. Mike, I thank you so much.
You're welcome.
For coming on and sharing. I thank you for your transparency and your willingness to just allow yourself to be free as you share. So I thank you for that. It's a blessing. So thank you, sir.
Thank you, my sister. Nothing but love for you. I appreciate it.
Mike, that's been happening all day long. Say it again.
I said, nothing but love for you, my sister. I appreciate you, and thank you for letting me share that. I pray for everybody listening right now and everybody that will see this. I pray that the information in the book not only gives you a good read, but also changes your life and takes you to the next level.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for that tuned in and those who will be watching it on the replay as well. So, Mike, thank you.
You're welcome. Quite welcome. Thank you.
Have a blessed night.
You too. Bye.